Hi, Scott Beardsley with Tubular Fitness. Today I'm going to go over what would be considered a specialized range of motion, and it works a specialized area of the shoulder called the rotator cuff. The rotator cuff comes into play in any movement that is like a throwing movement. So when you throw a quarterback, throwing a football in particular, and baseball, although all positions throw, the pitcher is susceptible to rotator cuff injuries because of the power that they're asked to exert throw after throw after throw, when, especially with the fastball and with the curveball, when you're going through the different angles of the wrist joint as you're moving that rotator cuff. It just puts extra stress on that area of the body. Now what we're really looking at when we're talking about the muscle being susceptible is when the shoulder girdle, and this is the shoulder girdle that moves all the way up and around, moving the shoulder joint in a lot of different angles here. But when you're working the rotator cuff in particular, you're going through a rotational motion, and you can see that the upper arm going into the joint here, that ball joint is actually rotating inside of that cuff area there. And it's when you're extended all the way back with the shoulder girdle and rotated all the way open with your shoulder joint in that rotation at the rotator cuff that you're most susceptible to injury. You don't have to be going through motion to be susceptible. Even if I were to be doing a press with a bar on my shoulders, pushing the weight up from behind my neck, you can see that my shoulder girdle is all the way open, my rotator cuff is all the way back, and that puts my shoulder at more risk of injury as I go through that range of motion. So even for a press, if you're not in real good shape in your shoulder area, you want to have that rotator cuff rotated forward a little bit, shoulder girdle brought forward just a little bit, and that's the position that you're at when you do a normal military press with the weight of the bar coming across your chest area here rather than the back of your neck. Now to go through an athletic motion, I've got the door anchor set up at about 1 foot to 2 feet above my head, and I'm working with a relatively light weight. I'm a relatively lightweight guy at 180 pounds. I'm not the size that you might have in, say, professional sports. So you want to work with a weight that allows you to go through the full range of motion and has some snap as you go through that range of motion. So with this weight, I can get to a distance, and you need to judge what the distance is as well as the resistance that you're working with, and I can go ahead and go through a quarterback type of movement and develop to where I could have a real quick release. And a quick release is really important when you're playing the game of football. And I can also go through that motion that a pitcher would go through, which is just a little bit different in the body unwinding with the arm coming up and over the head. And you can see and even hear just how much snap I can go ahead and put into this motion by having this light of a weight here. And you're going to be wanting to work both sides of your body. So as a balance, just as a, just kind of a procedure to go through when you work one side of your body, you want to do some work on the opposite side of your body to get some good all-around fitness going. Now to work what would be a more traditional exercise for the rotator cuff, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit of resistance here. There are two angles that you can have your elbow pointing to do a more traditional movement working the rotator cuff. You can have the elbow pointing out in front of you, or you can again open up that shoulder girdle and have the elbow pointing off to the side. The advantage of having the elbow pointing in front of you is that you're not as hyperextended when you're in this fully open position as you are when you turn to the side and you've got that shoulder girdle all the way opened up and your arm pulled all the way back. So now the other thing to keep in mind here though is the range of motion. Notice that at the end of the range of motion at the other end, I'm at about a 45-degree angle, where when I come around to the side, I can bring my arm all the way around to where my lower arm is pointing down toward the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this first like this. Again, you're going to want to do these with both arms. I'm just going to be showing this one side here. So to start off, I want the resistance coming from the back of my hand. I'm only going to be going through a partial range of motion here. And there's where that first third of the range of motion is. Now I could push on further through, but as I've shown with other exercises, you get to here, the tube's just flopping up and down, and that's not giving you any advantage of working against resistance. So I just work through the range of motion as far as I'm getting some good resistance there. Then to continue on, I go ahead and I turn around, and now I'm facing the opposite direction to the anchor, and this allows the resistance again to be coming from behind my hand, where I can go ahead and continue on through that range of motion, then step in a little bit closer, and I could even move the door anchor down. That would give me an even better angle, but I think you'll get the idea here that I can now work that rotator cuff all the way through. Now I'd want to be working the other arm again, and if I wanted to do it from the side, I'd go ahead and I'd work through that range of motion, just that first third of the range of motion. I'd turn around, face into the anchor, maybe even bend over to get that middle range of motion, and then I would stand up and move a little bit closer to the anchor to go ahead and finish that rotation off all the way down. I've done the power side of the movement, which is what you do when you throw, to balance that out and to really give an all-around fitness to that rotator cuff area and the shoulder girdle in general. I also want to do it from the opposite direction. So I've gone through with the resisting moving through this direction. Now I want to resist coming back through that range of motion. The way I'm going to do that is go ahead and face away from the door anchor. I'm going to demonstrate this with the elbow to the side. You could do it the same if you were doing it with the elbow pointing forward as well. But I'm going to go ahead now, and now I'm going ahead and I'm resisting through this first range of motion. Then I can go ahead and I can bend over, move a little bit closer into the door anchor to go through this middle range of motion. I could move the door anchor down. That would give me more of a directional advantage to the resistance coming from where I want it to, coming from behind the motion. And then to finish it off, I go ahead and I face into the anchor, and I go ahead and I go through that rotation of the rotator cuff, pulling back through, and doing it with both arms, both directions of rotation. You can see how you can, by lightening up on the weight, you can go through the power motion of the throw by working with a little heavier resistance, focusing on those mini ranges of motion, the thirds of the ranges of motion, how you can develop some real good conditioning in your rotator cuff that's going to help you to have more power in the sports as you're performing them or in your day-to-day activities, and be a real good preventative measure for helping to prevent injuries. So that's a good selection of exercises you can do to keep your shoulder area in real good health.